So we're talking about reality shifting in this extended version of our 100th episode. And, Bill and I have experienced so much of this ourselves and so much of it from around the Cognomovement world that it almost has become normal, just normal. And in this part, we'll tell some more fun stories. And this is an oldie but a goodie. Bill was leading one of the seminars. It was one that I wasn't at, I think, for some reason. And there was a lady there who had a son who was, failure to launch kind of a son, was still living at home. Do you remember this one? And he
Oh,
had the filthy room, and he and his mother were fighting all the time.
oh my gosh, this is a really funny one. Uh, she came in because she was so darn mad. She had a situation where he moved back in the house after being gone. And now he was like, I don't know if anybody ever saw that movie, Wedding Crashers. And Will Ferrell, Mom, where's the meatloaf? He was one of those, and he would not clean his room like a teenager, and his room was a screaming mess. And she was like, I can't, he won't let me in the door and he won't let me clean it. And the place is a mess. And anyway, so we just basically had her to do a session on that, her feeling of being upset at him. And we finished the session and she was like, oh, it's completely, I don't feel anything about it now. And literally, we walked out the door, and the phone rang, and she said, "Oh, this is my son. I got to take it." Walks outside, and then she comes back in, and she says, "You ain't gonna believe this. He just called me to say that, Mom, I just called because I know you're gone, and all the stuff, my stuff, is out in the hallway. I'm cleaning up, and I just didn't want you to be mad when you get home because I'm throwing everything out and I'm cleaning up and that sort of thing, you know." And she was actually in shock. Most interesting thing, though, is that the entire relationship changed. They were ended up going to events together, and these are the type of events that are, personal growth type events. And there it was. She was going to events with him.
That's incredible, really. I mean, that's a huge shift for him in the kind of person he was and what he became. And it's another one of those stories. She changed herself.
Right.
Another example of her holding him in place. We really want the other person to be the one that's the issue. And, in our perspective, they are. But when we change our full perspective of it and our expectation, that's what happens. Everything shifts. It all changes.
It all changes.
So let's tell some car stories. So I have one. Everybody I'll have a reality shift. I want myself a BMW, a Porsche, a Tesla. Well, we can tell stories of all three. So the first one is my story. I like to drive BMWs. Many of you know I was a car dealer for many years. I owned car dealerships. And I could drive anything on the lot that I wanted. And I've driven everything. And there were a few that I liked, but my favorite are BMW because it's nice and solid. If you step on the gas and need to get out of a way of a car, you can. I just like them. So I had this BMW. It was getting older, a lot of miles. It needed replaced. But by this time, you know, I was working with Cognomovement. I didn't own car dealerships anymore. And the last thing on the planet I would want to do is go to a car dealership. Can you imagine? God forbid. But, my husband and I had been talking for a little bit, we really need to get another car. So I did my session around it because I was feeling a certain kind of a way about having to go to a dealership. I know the inside of that business, just sounded like no fun whatsoever. But I knew what I wanted. I knew what year I wanted it. We were going to buy a used one. I knew how many miles. So I got myself to neutral And then all of a sudden, it just felt like, oh, today's the day. I think we should go look for a car. So my husband takes about 3.5 minutes and looks. Oh, hey, there's only one in the entire state of Oregon. It's 30 miles away from us. He picks up the phone, he calls. Sure, they have it. We drive over, we look at it, we take a test drive. It's exactly the price we wanted to pay. And no problem. In 20 minutes, we took that car home. Like that fit that fast. The exact car in the right color, at the right distance, with the right mileage, because I was not holding that as a problem. There was no resistance in my body. We had another one of Bill's clients who wanted a Porsche, but had some real issues, right?
Well, gosh, well, I have so many car stories about people. Cars are very emotional for people. And so
It's
this
true.
particular, yeah, this particular one, this was a Porsche S4, and it had to be a Porsche S4. Now it's a nice high performance car, not cheap, not cheap. And um, they wanted this for years. Years. I want to manifest a Porsche S4. Years they've been thinking about it and thinking about it and looking and looking. Anyway, what's keeping you from it? Oh, I don't know. I don't know why I can't manifest it. Well, anyway, we begin to work, and when we begin to work, and the way Cognomovement works is we can tell through a person's neurology where the resistance is, and we get them into a certain position, and they're like, oh my god, I can't get this Porsche, because then I would need to move. I actually have to move residence in order to do that. So that's not going to work. Okay, let's do a session on, part of the session on that. Oh, and then there was another place that it was like, oh my god, I'm afraid if I actually get the Porsche S4, all my friends are going to abandon me. They're going to think that I am some sort of whatever, and they're not going to like it, and they're going to leave me. I'm going to lose my friends. Can you imagine what kind of resistance you would be? But it wasn't apparent, right? There was only the pure desire for Porsche S4, but underlying it, unbeknownst, there was a fear, So all of these things, there was one after the next, after the next, after the next. And we cleared out 1, 2, 3, 4, until we could tell they were all gone. And guess what happens? The Porsche S4 showed up. Got a picture of it. You can actually see it on the website. It was such a fun story because it wasn't readily apparent that um, the objections, consciously the person is telling themselves, I got no objection at all. I want that ride. But there it was.
Yeah, it's true. But you do notice when you think about it that you feel some tension around it. There's a little push and pull about it in your body. Well, I want it, but I can't have it. When it's neutral, all the circumstances show up for you to have the thing. Now, it doesn't always poof in your driveway until it does. One of our practitioners came home from one of our events in which she'd been working on a Tesla, and there's a Tesla with a big red bow in her driveway. Now, this one is funny to me because it reminds me of the stories of I think it was the Incan people when the Spaniards arrived in Mexico and in South America. They couldn't see the ships because they had no idea, no way to relate to what that was. It took them a while before they could actually physically even see them because they had no reference for them. So when she drives in the driveway, you know, she can kind of see this thing, but she didn't realize it had a big red bow on it. She thought that maybe her son's girlfriend was there. Like it had never even occurred to her that poof, that was her Tesla. It was exactly the right pearl white, every detail that she wanted. Well, it turned out her husband had bought it for her, unbeknownst to her, and there it was. But it was funny because she shares that she was a little annoyed because that's not exactly the way she wanted it. The universe, she made way for the universe to provide it. She forgot to give instructions for how it would arrive. But there it was, poof, in the driveway. She got it. I think that was a funny story because it took her mind a little while to realize, even be able to see the white car with the big red bow. I had said in the earlier part of our show today about kids who couldn't speak, who are now speaking through typing, and I want to share that story. This is particularly interesting because it's about changing reality in a general way that paves the path for other people. One of our practitioners is a speech therapist, and she really knew that these kids she was working with, some of them who didn't speak, that there was a lot going on in their minds, that they had a lot to say, but there was no proof of it. So she started using Cognomovement with them and also on herself around these particular clients that she was working with. And then all of a sudden, several of them could type where they couldn't before. There's a device that allows them to type words and symbols and in individual letters to communicate. And all of a sudden, they were silent. Their parents had never heard a thought that they ever had because they didn't speak. And all of a sudden, these kids started typing books, books where they're so excited to get what's in their mind out. And they're highly, highly intelligent. They're even sarcastic. They want to know if they can swear. They're like little philosophers in their mind. So one minute these clients, they couldn't speak. And now it's not just a minute. It's been over time. They are fully integrating into the world that's around them, sharing the thoughts that are in their mind. So that has actually paved the way for more and more children to do what was impossible before, which is now possible. Speaking of possible and impossible, we've done that with some athletes as well. We had an athlete who wanted to be able to jump with both feet. He's a basketball player, wanted to be able to jump with both feet. And he was having an issue with both of his feet cooperating and jumping at the same time. So we changed that, changed his perspective, changed the perspective of his physical body, and he gained just 12 inches in a jump. Now, somebody else swears it's 18, but I'm going to go with 12. I was there. I think it was 12 inches. That's a huge change in about 3 minutes. I count that as a reality shift.
Can you imagine that? For those of you athletes, right, out there, gaining 12 inches in a jump. Liz had done this. This young man was a professional, candidate. So this is something that that was of tremendous value to him. And that 12 inches, by the way, that 12 inches was so extreme that at one time that he could no longer dunk, because imagine that 12 to 18 inches. Somebody else said 18 on that one, but that you can imagine where are my hands relative to the net if I'm 12 inches higher. So anyway, Liz had to reprogram his dunk. That's amazing, amazing stuff.
Yeah, we had another athlete that we changed their ranking. They were a B ranking. They wanted to be a master ranking. That would have been 3 levels ahead of them. And in their career, it was an amateur, semi-pro. They wouldn't have shifted a rank more than 1 ranking in a lifetime for most of them. And we shifted that ranking in 3 months. We changed reality. We changed the rules of the universe. And, Bill and I started out the show today talking about, changing the rules in a corporation, a media event that we wanted, and we needed to be in a different time. This changed the rules of what becomes possible in terms of the career of an athlete. And, I think we've seen this more and more and more um, in this 21st century, where what seemed impossible is now possible in all areas of life. But being able to have the tools to do it and know how to do it for yourself, that's the part that you and I figured out, Bill, that
Right.
we know if we can change at the neurological level what our body perceives through our senses and how that signal gets formed to send to our brain creates the perception. We can change the way the body receives that information and sends that signal. We can change reality. It's pretty incredible.
It really is. And it's kind of the missing piece of the puzzle for the mystics. The mystics knew if you can permanently alter your perspective and maintain it, that reality will bend to it. Well, what we have, this missing component of that, is that enable you to make that permanent shift through your neurological system, which is where you get your automatic reaction.
Yeah.
Reactions are done through the nervous system. It's also called the subconscious. But that once you have that and it's automatic, then that's how you're going to see the world.
Yeah. It's all about that sensation and senses. It's how we create reality. If you have been listening to Law of Attraction for, since about the 80s and mid 80s, late 80s, that you would have heard that you create your own reality. And most people would say, I would never create this crap that I'm in the middle of. Except, unfortunately, that you do. Not intentionally, though. What Bill said is automatic. It is automatic. We learn from the time we're in the womb, from what we hear, what we taste, what our mother experiences. Our nervous system collects all that data and it just informs the next thing and the next thing and the next thing we do in an automated way just to keep us safe and alive. That's all. And then we believe those automations are our beliefs. We think they're our belief systems when they're really not. They're kind of those built-in codes that we got from maybe our family, from maybe church, from maybe school, from maybe an odd comment that somebody made one point in our life. It informs that body about how to feel and what signal to send to the brain. So all we did is figured out how to collapse those, how to delete the things that were automatic that held us with the blinders on. We also figured out how to completely open up your visual reference, which we didn't realize, but at the time when we can open what your eyes can actually see, you now can see things that you didn't know were even there on the planet. They were there the whole time. You couldn't see it. So for you, it didn't exist. But for everybody else, it did. That's an incredible thing. You had one of those experiences where after a session, all of a sudden you could see, what was it, a convenience store where you believed there was a car dealership?
I had lived, 30 plus years, the freeway entrance that I would get on for 30 years across, on the corner was Mossy Nissan. Mossy Nissan is Nissan, and the brand, the particular one was called Mossy. And I would have bet $1 million. If I had $20 million, I would have bet all $20 million. It's a Mossy Nissan on that corner. I pass by it every day. And then after a session, all of a sudden I'm sitting there at the stoplight and I'm there with my wife, and I look over and there's a 7-Eleven gas station on the corner, and next to it is the Mossy Nissan. But on the corner is the 7-Eleven gas station. And it looks old. And I look over and I say, how long's that been there? And she goes, all our lives. And it looks it too. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't even believe I could never actually see it. I literally couldn't see it. And I've had those now um, all over the place, all over the place, complete buildings, signs, everything. Your system shuts down the data that's coming in. And when you expand your brain and that corresponds with the vision. Those are one system, by the way. The brain and the eyes and the spinal cord are one, and they one affects the other.
It's incredible. So we'll wrap it up here for this session, and we will talk a lot more about this in the future. But I'll end it on this little teaser. Bill experienced not being able to see something that he believed was clearly there, and it's here for him now. But who's to say he didn't enter a new reality or a brand new timeline or dimension, which I think is totally possible too, and we'll talk about another time. All right, everybody. Thanks, Bill McKenna, for sharing your stories with us today.
Thank you, Liz. That was just fun.
That's fun. It's a fun topic, and you guys, it couldn't be more real, and you can do it.